Whoa. Jerome and the music team, you lift me up. Are you lifted up? Yeah. Wow. Wow. I am so happy to be here. So one of my favorite affirmations is, it's another beautiful day in my consciousness. Join me in knowing that. It's another beautiful day in my consciousness. Again, it's another beautiful day in my consciousness. Do you feel it? Do you feel it? So let's see how we're doing here with the technology. Okay, we're doing good. So I am so pleased to be here to speak with you about a book that took 8 years to birth, Unity and A Course in Miracles. And so during this time, we're going to go through a little background, some overview, Unity's 5 basic principles, some distinctions, some synergy, and the one thing. So in background, when I came to Unity Village, I had been studying mostly A Course in Miracles. And when I came here as an SEE student, then as a ministerial student, I was pretty much told to kind of keep it quiet, that I was studying A Course in Miracles. But those who know me, it's hard to keep me quiet. Yep. I speak the truth I know. And I should precede that with, in my opinion. But the interesting thing is when I got here, I went to the library and the archives to see what there might be in regards to Unity and A Course in Miracles. And I found some things, but not what I was really looking for. And so I began to ask the question, 2 questions really. Where are the Unity writers of today? Because I noticed there were writers from years ago, but no really current writers. And I kept asking or saying, someone needs to write a book about A Course in Miracles and Unity. And so around 2006, after asking that question for 10 years, where are the Unity writers? I started to write. So if you're asking yourself the question about something getting done and you don't see it getting done, maybe it's yours to do. Did you ever think about that? Maybe it's just yours to do, and for you to step out in faith that it is yours to do, you will be able to accomplish it. Because every idea comes with enough substance to fulfill it. And so in 2008, a student showed up in the ministerial program, Reverend Bill Heller. Some of you might know him. And he was a lover of A Course in Miracles and Unity. And I shared with him this, gosh, I wish somebody would. And he said, why not us? And so began an 8-year journey. So I want to start with this quote from Charles Fillmore that I found in the archives, unpublished material. We have to develop in ourselves this capacity to know ourselves. That is so important, knowing yourself. Another can suggest things, but we have to take the suggestions and apply it to our own understanding. So what I'm going to share with you today is my understanding. My only hope is that you will understand what I'm saying and that you will apply it to your own understanding and arrive at your own conclusions and your own beliefs. Because in Unity, we don't expect you to check your intelligence at the door. We expect you to bring it inside and look at what we're saying and evaluate it for yourself. We have no dogma. We have no doctrine. Right? Now, really, I would like you to believe exactly as I do, but I've learned that that's an impossibility. So here we go. So here's the big picture. Both Unity and A Course in Miracles, in the traditional writings, we find Christian terminology, we find male-centric language, and they use a dualistic language to explain a non-dualistic reality. When we say there's only love, we're speaking to that non-dualistic reality. Anything unlike love is transitory and, in that sense, illusionary. And when we talk about non-dualistic, What we really mean is there's not a real opposing something. So one way we say that in unity is that there is no devil. There is no devil. There is no Satan. There is no opposing power. And have you ever thought of this? When we say there's only one presence and one power, do you realize that all the presence and all the power you have is that presence? That's the truth of what we are. You are the very presence and the very power of the divine at the point of view. And they both use affirmations and denials. Do you guys know a little something about affirmations and denials? Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So for a few more minutes, I'm going to go out there and join you, and we're going to talk about what's coming up on the slides. Is that okay? Well, if it isn't, I'm going to do it anyway. So there we go. Okay, so Bill and I began looking at, we're not getting a clear picture here. Okay, so I'm going to have to, whoops. I'm going to take this down with me, and I'm going to help you. How's that? Okay, so we have these 5 basic principles. You've heard about those, right? And these come from The Keys to the Kingdom by Reverend Connie Fillmore. God is absolute good everywhere present. God is absolute good everywhere present. And of course, in miracles we find God is all in a very, very literal sense. All being is in him who is all being. Very, very similar ideas. That divinity, that is the good, that is the love, is everywhere, totally present. There's not little pieces of God everywhere. The divine is everywhere, totally present. And then the second one reads like this. Let me turn the page. Human beings have a spark of divinity with them, the Christ spirit within. The very essence is of God, and therefore they are inherently good. The very essence of what you are is this Christ principle. And of course, in Miracles says, deep in your mind, the Holy Christ in you is waiting your acknowledgement as you. The Holy Christ in you is waiting the acknowledgement as you. You are this Christ principle, this love at the core of your beingness. The third principle says, human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. Now, most people miss that last sentence. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. In thought. And Charles Fillmore famously said, God ideates, humankind thinks. God ideates, humankind thinks. And of course, in miracles we find whatever thoughts you accept into your mind has reality for you. Little r reality. It is your acceptance of it that makes it real. All thinking produces form at some level. All thinking produces form at some level. And science is showing us in physiology that it's looking like every thought creates some sort of molecule or activity within our physical bodies. Prayer is creative thinking that heightens the connection with God and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and every good. And a parallel in A Course in Miracles, true prayer must avoid the pitfall of asking to entreat. Ask rather to receive what is already given, to accept what is already there. So you see, there isn't a receiving. It's simply the awareness and the awakening to that which is already there, and that is your innate divinity. It's your wisdom, it's your health, it's your prosperity, it's everything good. And then the last principle says, knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth. Oh, thank you very much. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. See, messing around with these ideas at our intellectual level and doing nothing might be fun and entertaining, but they become a distraction. What we're supposed to do is bring them into a living experience in our lives. It goes on to say, a person must also live the truth that he or she knows. Live the truth that he or she knows. Now, that word truth is tricky, because what that truth means for me in a unity context is the principles and the laws. We must know the principles and laws and use them. And A Course in Miracles says, a theoretical foundation such as the text provides is necessary, yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the Course possible. So it is in the doing that we really bring home the meaning of any of the theoretical foundations. So, in a big picture way, those are the commonalities, the 5 basic principles. And believe me, you will find in the book, we go into a lot more detail at a more granular level. But that's the big picture. But I thought it would be important for us to look at some of the distinctions. And I use the word distinction very purposely, because the word differences often carries a negative connotation. So just like you and I are distinct from each other, and that's a good thing. So in unity, we find something called the adverse ego. That's part of the definition there on the left. When the ego attaches itself to sense consciousness, this is known as the adverse ego. It is the adverse ego that causes all the trouble in the world. So you see, in unity is found this negative concept of the ego. In fact, I sometimes hear it said that ego stands for edging God out. I'm sure you've heard that before. Edging God out. In A Course in Miracles, we find a similar perception of the ego. The ego is idolatry. The sign limited and separate itself, born in a body, doomed to suffer, and to end its life in death. And so in A Course in Miracles, we find this overall very negative view of the ego. And while we find a negative view of the ego in unity, we also find something very, very interesting and distinct. In the Revealing Word, we find Fillmore saying, ego is the I. The ego is man, and by reason of his divinity, he makes and remakes as he wills. Friends, that might be one of the most important sentences in all of unity, that you are making and remaking according to your own will. And the only reason you can do this is because of your divinity, your divine nature, your innate nature. And Fillmore goes on to say, in this lie his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. So Fillmore perceived that there is an aspect of our ego that is supportive. The ego of itself is possessed of nothing. It is a mere ignorant child of innocence floating in the mind of being. And notice that's capitalized. So Fillmore does not separate the ego as if it's someplace else. It is actually a mere ignorant child floating in the mind of being. And then here's the kicker. But through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. Through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. So our egos aren't all bad, folks. There is that of us in our ego belief system that is supportive, that is that doorway from the infinite to the finite that brings all the treasures of God into our awareness and for our use. We find another distinction around the concept of body and healing. In A Course in Miracles, we find God did not make the body. Now, okay, folks, I have to say, now don't shoot the messenger here, okay? Because there's probably some of you that believe that God created your body, and that's fine. But you're not going to find that in A Course in Miracles. And in fact, you will see that you won't find it in unity either, in some of the writings. God did not make the body because it is destructible, and therefore it is not of the kingdom. The body is the symbol of what you think you are. It is clearly a separation device, and therefore does not exist. What A Course in Miracles says is that the ego began as a simple thought of separation, and that the body is a demonstration, an outer demonstration of that thought of separation. In unity, we find the body is the outer expression of consciousness. Now, that would be really great if he stopped there. But he goes on to say, this precipitation of the thinking part of man. So in that two-part sentence, Fillmore is basically conveying the idea that God is not directly manifesting our physical bodies. Fillmore says, God created the idea of the body of man as a self-perpetuating, self-renewing organism, which man, humankind, you and me, reconstruct into his personal body. God creates the body idea or divine idea, and man, by his thinking, makes it manifest. So while they're similar in saying that the divine is not directly manifesting the physical body, unity is distinct in saying that it is the divine ideas that are God, that those divine ideas in divine mind are what we use to make the physical body. Course in Miracles says the ego's simply making it up. And so let's look at some of the synergy now. So going back to a big picture view of the two, they both do two things. They both talk about this innate divine nature that is love, this Christ that is the truth of what we are. And they both talk about undoing the ego. In Unity's case, it's undoing those adverse aspects of our belief system, those beliefs that we use in one way or another to hold ourselves back. The synergy comes in here. In A Course in Miracles, it shares about how you are divine, how you are the Christ. But the bulk of the teaching is about how we undo the ego belief system. How do we get rid of those negative thoughts that tend to take us away from the awareness of our divinity? While unity mostly is about how do we bring forth that Christ nature from ourselves, and a little bit about undoing the ego. So in a way, if you could work them together, you have a synergy that is really quite magnificent. Really quite magnificent. Because this is the work I was doing at the beginning. And Unity has this set of beliefs called the 12 powers. Have you heard the 12 powers? Yeah. So the 12 powers are these 12 innate abilities that we use to manifest our Christ nature. And it's been my experience that we talk about them at too high and of a general level. In fact, we talk about them in a way that is too vague and therefore not practical. And I have a saying that I got from a student. What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. Okay? What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. And so if we have a vague idea of what the power of faith is, it's good, but I can't really put it into play. So I've been developing the 12 powers in my own way, in my own opinion, on how I could use these at a very granular level of my individual thoughts. Because I think that's what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore intended. Because if you look at their historic texts, there is barely a page where they do not mention the powers in some general vague way. So what I've discovered is each of the 12 powers is an operating system for me to manage my day-to-day thoughts. And this is the way in which I eliminate the beliefs that are from my adverse ego and take on the beliefs from my spiritual side, my spiritual ego. And I believe those lessons in A Course in Miracles that are over 365 days are denials and affirmations that we can use to clear out a lot of the ego belief system. And they work in a very subtle way. And so we have here two systems that can be worked together. And they work just fine by themselves. And then I wanted to bring this to close because this is a way in which they are similar. So the reason why I love the Course in Miracles is very similar to the reason why I love unity. I discovered that nothing else matters if I do this one thing. Now, what do I mean by nothing else matters? So in my lifetime, I've studied tarot cards and astrology and soul contracts and karma and reincarnation, okay? They all have a usefulness. In fact, if you find them useful in your life to be better, fantastic. But I discovered for myself, in my opinion, something that is easier. Nothing else matters if you do this one thing. In unity, be the best you can be. Be the best Christ you can be. If you're being this Christ potential, if you're being this love on a moment-to-moment basis, none of that matters. It takes care of where the stars are positioned. It takes care of what the tarot cards say. It takes care of soul contracts, takes care of karma, takes care of reincarnation, takes care of all of that. And believe me, folks, I'd rather focus on one thing than a multitude. What about you? Okay? And A Course in Miracles says it this way. Everything is either love or a call for love. Everything is either love or a call for love. So if everything is love or a call for love, what's our response? Love, right? Love. And we have this from our master teacher. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And in unity, when I read the words, love the Lord your God, I mean love and desire to know my Godness. Not something separate and different, but the very truth of my beingness, the very truth of your beingness. Love the Lord my God. That is the truth of what I am. And loving our neighbor as ourselves. So we're loving ourselves, we're loving others. And Jesus took it one more step. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. If we have all of those, is there anybody else? Right? That's everybody. That's everybody. And I want to share one more thing that I hadn't planned on. But with all this activity that's happening in the world, I'm going to offer you Paul Hasselbeck's metaphysical view of what's happening. Okay? So I believe that there is a surge of divinity, a surge of divine love moving from the infinite to the finite right now. And the very evidence of it is the turmoil, okay? Because it demonstrates the concept of chemicalization. Do you know what that is? Chemicalization. So individually, that chemicalization is when I'm taking on a new truth, I get stirred up because the old beliefs get stirred up. And those old beliefs coming up and the uncomfortableness isn't evidence I'm doing something wrong. It's evidence I'm doing the right thing. And I should keep doing it. And I believe all these shootings, I believe ISIL, I believe all of that stuff is a collective chemicalization to the love that's coming forth, right? And we need to keep focusing on that love and keep being that love, being the best Christ we can be, seeing everything as either an expression of love or a call for love. And friends, that is the fundamental teaching of unity, and that is the fundamental teaching of A Course in Miracles. It's your job to think about it, right? As Fillmore said in that first slide, I think I put it here. We have to develop in ourselves this capacity to know ourselves. Another can suggest things, but we have to take the suggestions and apply it to our own understanding. You need to go and prove the truths for yourself. Go forth and be the Christ you are. Go forth and be the love, no matter the appearances. And so it is. Thank you.